we need to obviously talk about Partygate. I got to those sections of the book, and it seemed to me, well, in terms you basically say, it wasn't a big deal, I regret apologising. Is that really your position, that you regret apologising?
No.
That is what you say in the book.
Well, let me explain what I said, because if you look at Unleashed, as I say, there's plenty.
I've read it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says. That it was basically a load of nonsense, and you regret apologising. Do you regret apologising to the Queen?
Let me give you my own.
Answer that. Do you regret apologising to the Queen?
Let me give you my own view.
Well, if you answer my question, let's then perhaps go on to have your view. Do you regret apologising to the Queen?
Look, I don't discuss my conversations with the Queen.
That wasn't my question. My question was, do you regret apologising to the Queen?
Let me explain what I meant by that observation, because it's very, very important. If you read the book, you'll see there's plenty of ways in which I deeply recriminate myself for things I got wrong. And I blame myself in all sorts of ways and for mistakes I made. But what I was trying to say there was, I think that the blanket apology, the sort of apology I issued right at the beginning, I think the trouble with it was that afterwards, all the accusations that then rained down on officials who'd been working very hard in Number 10 and elsewhere were thought to be true. And by apologising, I had sort of inadvertently validated the entire corpus.
I get that, but
and it wasn't fair on those people.
Okay, I've got to jump here, because there are millions of people who will be watching this, who will be on the edge of their seats at this point for a very simple reason. Let's just wind back a minute. As you know, we broke quite a lot of the Partygate stories. I was in this newsroom when Paul Brand came in with an email from Martin Reynolds, your private secretary. This is like quite at the start of COVID. The rules have only just been adjusted after the first lockdown to say that you can only meet one person outside. But this is at a time where people are not being able to go to hospital to say goodbye to their dying relatives. People are dying alone. People are not allowed to go to funerals. People are agonisingly observe the rules. You have told us that people will die if we don't observe the rules.
Yes.
And here is your private secretary writing to over 100 people, inviting them to a party in the Downing Street Garden.
Sorry, hang on a second.
People can't understand why you wouldn't be paralytically apologetic about that.
Because I was at the time. If you remember what happened.
But now you're saying, it wasn't a big deal. I shouldn't have apologised.
Well, if you look at the reason the Downing Street Garden was used was because it was thought to be a much safer environment, and we had to maintain distancing. But look, we
were in this newsroom with arrows saying, walk round this way.
And so were we.
We were outside.
So were we.
Agonisingly sticking with one person. Well, you weren't. You were inviting 100 people to the garden. It's madness.
But that was outside. I really, really don't think that those officials thought that they were setting out to break the rules.
But they were breaking the rules.
They thought that they were doing something. They were working round the clock. And they thought they were within the framework.
But they were repeatedly found to be breaking the rules by the police.
I don't know.
We saw members of your staff laughing on a video about breaking the rules. The reason I'm pressing this is that I just know there were people watching this programme who are really upset with you, and they want to know that you understand.
Of course I understand it, and you can't say that I haven't been exposed to, over the last few years, to the full force of people's anger and indignation.
I've got to press this. There were stories of drunkenness, physical altercations, and I'm like, I can't.
There were stories, Tom,
right,
where those stories substantiated. I can only give you my honest opinion of it all now, right? Who investigated this thing? Why don't you tell our viewers who investigated it?
I don't want to go down the avenue. No, it was Sue Gray.
And who is, just to remind our viewers who Sue Gray is.
Sue Gray is a leading civil servant.
What post does she currently hold?
We're not going down this road.
Why not?
Because no one disputes the essential facts. I asked you about Martin Reynolds inviting 100 people.
I will tell our viewers what post Sue Gray currently
holds. I know everyone knows what Sue Gray does.
I'm going to tell them.
This is unfair on Sue Gray, who is not here to defend herself. You are here to defend yourself, so I'm making...
I'm so sorry. Well, let me just...
I'm asking the questions on behalf of our viewers.
She's the chief of staff of the leader.
We're all well aware of that. This is what really began the slide for you.
Well, let's address that. Okay? Let's address that, because I don't think we're going to agree on the other thing. I feel deeply about people's indignation. I understand when I look back and I look at the role of Steve
That's
Gray,
the precise question I'm asking.
Let me just go.
I thought you were sorry, but in the book you're not.
Well, I obviously bitterly regret mistakes that I made. But what I was trying to say is that by a blanket apology at the outset, I seem to inculpate everybody for every accusation, and you've just made several false ones just now, every accusation that was subsequently made. And they were made, by the way, by somebody who's now, what is she? Anyone remember? Chief of Staff to the leader of the Labour Party.
What your critics would say about you is, this is the story of your life. You just don't think the rules apply to you.
No, on the contrary. I think that so in July 2022, when I resigned, when Partygate had been running and things had been very tough, don't forget that we were only a couple of points behind, so at one point put us 2 points behind in the polls. I had a very positive agenda, which you will discover in Unleashed. We were getting on with a lot of wonderful things.
We haven't got
and I have, no. I had every hope that I would go on and every prospect of going on to win the next election.
I want to come to the legacy at the end, but just very quickly before we do that, some quick fire questions. Is Donald Trump telling the truth when he says he won the 2020 election?
No.
Trump or Harris, who would you like to see win?
Not for a UK Prime Minister. I had good relations with Biden and with Trump. Job of a UK Premier is to be on the best possible terms.
But you're not Premier anymore. So who would you?
Yeah, I know, but but that's still the position.
Okay. Who would you like to see as leader of the Tory party?
I'm not going to. There's lots of good candidates, or 4 good candidates.
You've said that we need another referendum on whether we should be in the European Convention for Human Rights. Only one candidate, I believe, is Robert Jenrick, is in favour of leaving.
Yes, I'm not.
So does that mean you support him?
I'm not certain it has to be a referendum, but I do think that the court.
So you support Jenrick?
That is that's a.
That's a leading question.
I think there's probably some logical fallacy that you've just committed, but I can't.
Okay, finally,
it's too long since I.
Who was a better Premier, Sunak or Truss?
Look, I think both.
I think I can ask you to answer that.
As I say in Unleashed,
you don't say anything about who you thought was a better Prime Minister out of Sunak.
Okay, but I say that they both had good qualities and they both had their share of bad luck. I think what everybody needs to do in our party is get back to the winning agenda that we had. And in 2019, we put together an enormous coalition of people. I'm afraid what we did wrong was we basically turned our backs on 2 vast sectors of our coalition. And we need to get them back.
Okay.
And if you read Unleashed, you will discover.
If you read Unleashed, you'll discover that you think a lot of people betrayed you. Rishi Sunak, Lee Cain, Dominic Cummings. The list is very long. Michael Gove. Should I point out the obvious by saying that the one thing they have in common? You appointed them all. Does that make you a terrible judge of character?
Look, I think that people have different strengths and for different roles. And if I look, all those individuals, actually, all the ones that you've mentioned, played an important part in delivering what was very, very difficult at the time, which was the type of real constitutional independence that we need.
You won an enormous victory in 2019, a historic, unprecedented victory. 3 years later, you're out. A totally unprecedented situation. 62 members of your own government. That's never happened before like that. Do you think, you give the impression in the book the problem was them?
No,
you acknowledge that the problem might have been you?
Yeah, I do say that. I mean, there's yards and yards of self-loathing and self-explanation. I do say that. But I also think is that, if I had a regret, it's that because of COVID, I wasn't able to spend enough time in a pretty crucial period talking to colleagues and really making sure they were okay.
Anthony Seldon, who I guess you would call more or less the sort of official biographer of Prime Ministers, says you're the worst Prime Minister in British history. In the whole of history, I mean, arguably from when the office was reformed after Lloyd George, but that was the allegation, worse than Truss, worse than anyone. What do you say to that?
Well, I think I don't know this guy very well, but I think that's complete nonsense. I think that you will find a pretty extraordinary story that we packed in to 3 years. And amongst other things, what we did was we delivered full constitutional freedom and independence for this country of a kind that was very, very hard to do and that was deeply resisted by many other people, which I think was totally the right thing for the UK. And not only did we deliver freedom and independence for our own country, but thanks to the activism of the UK government, which was made possible by Brexit, we were instrumental in protecting another great European country from having its own, Ukraine, from having its own freedom and independence extinguished. And that was quite a lot to do just in 3 years, and I've hardly got going. One
brief final question. I read 700 pages of the book, and at the end...
738. You must have skipped 38.
I read them all. Okay. At the end, I was left with one question, perhaps, that I think everyone who reads the book will be left with, and it is a simple one. Is your political career over?
Look, I'm very, very glad you asked that, because I'm living a life of blameless obscurity in rustic obscurity.
Blameless obscurity here in a television studio in front of millions.
Writing books, and my chances of returning to politics, as I think I've said before, about as good as my being reincarnated as an olive, blinded by a champagne cork, locked in a disused fridge, or decapitated by a frisbee. But in any case, the answer to your question
is to
be found in the pages, the 738 pages of Unleashed, which is now unleashed.
I think I'll take that as a return is possible.
Where is Unleashed?
And, well, I think we're probably aware of the title by now, so I don't think you need to produce a copy. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much indeed for giving us the time.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.